What's your secret affair story that destroyed your relationship with your partner? We worked for the same company, in the same department, on the same projects. It began with a 3-hour lunch conversation during a business trip and continued for 6 months, 2,000 miles apart. We had marathon weekday chat sessions, exchanged long emails, sent explicit photos, FedExed innerwears, shared amateur videos, and even SoundCloud recordings of our solo. There were secret 2 short phone calls from park benches on my way home from work or while I was on vacation with friends. We fell in love with the connection, the empathy that grew from emotional relevance, the kinship of science, geekdom, and philosophical inquiry. There was also the escape from the everyday in our shared virtual fantasies. The madness was that we never kissed or been intimate, yet we knew each other intimately. We peeled back each other's emotions until there was nothing left but the raw, vulnerable underbelly we both loved exposing, like children showing their cuts and scrapes. We were both married. For 10 years, I was with a controlling a-hole. He never let me listen to music in the car or at home because he hated my taste, and he never once cried, even at the sudden death of a coworker, because he saw tears as a weakness and blamed me when I occasionally shed them. Eventually, everything came out in the open. Feelings were hurt. Both spouses were steamrolled. I don't think either of them saw it coming. His wife found out about me and threatened to leave their family if he continued communicating with me. I didn't want to end it, but I said goodbye. I had already hurt my husband and couldn't bear causing further pain to his wife and their 2 children. The man I had an affair with changed me. He gave me the strength to stand up to my manipulative husband, rediscover my identity, and recognize all the sacrifices I had made in my life to please someone else at the expense of my own happiness. After I confessed to my husband, he refused to attend marital counseling and was unwilling to explore an open relationship. With encouragement from my therapist and friends, I moved out in 2 weeks and finalized the divorce 5 months later. My ex-husband now lives halfway across the world with a woman half his age, and I sincerely hope he is happier. While married, we appeared happy on the surface, but it was a front. Inside, we were both miserable and unfulfilled. The affair simply turned it inside out. Organized religion never found me, and I never found it. Divorce is the only decision I've made in my life that approaches absolute faith. I couldn't stay married after my affair. I fell in love with someone else without any proof that it existed. No one needs to remind me that blind conviction is impetuous and scientifically irresponsible. I may never find evidence to separate the imaginary from the real, but I am 100% certain of what I felt. Since the divorce, living alone has been a lesson in both monastic spirituality and mischievous morality. People are conditioned to offer, "I'm sorry," but I stop them and say, "Don't be." I've lived melodiously and learned meteorically more about myself than I ever dreamed possible. Story 2. This was one of the scummiest things I've ever done. I cheated on my boyfriend with one of his friends. I never thought I would cheat, ever, not even flirt. Throughout the relationship, I never flirted with other guys or did anything like that, but my boyfriend's friend liked me, and he was persistent. Our relationship was going through a rough patch, and he told me he wanted to be there for me. I believed we were just going to talk, but before I knew it, he was kissing me. Craving physical attention, I went along with it. We didn't do it, but we did a lot more than that. I felt horrible afterward, like I had hit the lowest of the low. I was bawling, and the guilt was eating me alive. That night, I went to my boyfriend's house but couldn't look him in the eye, so I wrote down what I had done and handed him the note. He forgave me, partly because his friend had pulled stunts like that in the past. We're still together and have been for 1 year and almost 3 months. I learned a lot from the experience, mainly that the brief pleasure you get during cheating is nothing compared to the guilt and horror of what you've done, at least in my case. Story 3. I was her boss. One day, she brought up how her intimate life had waned and asked the entire crew for ideas on how to spice things up with her fiancé. People were throwing out vulgar suggestions, and I simply said she wouldn't like my opinion and walked away. It seemed inappropriate to comment on something like that publicly. I should also mention that she was in management too, but I had seniority and was actually her trainer. At the end of her shift, I was still at work when I received a simple text asking why I wouldn't share my opinion. I initially blew her off, but she persisted and eventually revealed that she and her fiancé had even tried swinging with other couples. Coincidentally, my girlfriend and I had as well. Long story short, they basically made our house a home away from home, and fun times were had as soon as the kids were in bed. The problem was that I had feelings for this girl, and it was obvious to everyone. We never worked out though. We both tried. but she couldn't leave her fiancé, even though she felt the same way about me. My girlfriend went back to her faith, and we fell apart. I'm still trying to support them, even though I had to quit that job to get away from her. I didn't really learn anything I didn't already know. My actions were foolish. I had fun, but I lost everything over a girl I cared about too much. Story 4. I was with my ex-boyfriend for a long time. We met in high school, and both of our families assumed we would get married. Relationship was great at first, but after about a year, it became very suffocating. He was extremely needy, depressive, had anger issues, and constantly took these out on me. He was older than me and went to college while I was still in high school, and he was completely unable to create a social life there without me. At one point, he got very drunk and cheated on me. Just a one-night thing. We didn't sleep together. I forgave him, but he felt so guilty that he eventually transferred to a college closer to our hometown. I loved him and assumed we would be together forever, which made me feel depressed when he treated me badly. I wanted to be happy with him, but I worried that I wasn't. About 2 years into the relationship, I attended a summer tech program in a nearby city. There was an older guy on the staff, and we hit it off immediately. Our interactions were humorous and flirty, but I didn't think much of it. He was 7 or 8 years older than me and had a girlfriend, so I assumed he was just being funny and nice. Then we hung out outside of the program a few times, and he started coming on to me very strongly. There was a lot of physical contact. Not exactly what you would call cheating, but definitely not appropriate. We had this strange dynamic for a while, full of intense tension. We found ways to flirt with or touch each other while at the program, and I lied to my boyfriend about spending so much time alone with this guy. On paper, it might not look like we cheated. There was no kissing, banging, or anything like that. But it was at a level where if either of our significant others had seen what was happening for even a minute, it would have been disastrous. The fact that we never resolved the tension only made it more intense. Eventually, my boyfriend and I found a better rhythm, and things started going well again. I told the other guy outright that I wasn't going to sleep with him, and that, while I enjoyed our friendship, I wasn't going to do that much damage to my relationship. He basically disappeared for a while. I spent a few more years with my boyfriend, returning occasionally to the same long, difficult patterns I described earlier, and only heard from the other guy sporadically, usually when he was drunk or just trying to get me to meet up with him. I knew I had made the right decision by walking away, but I still don't feel completely guilt-free about what happened. At the time, it felt strange because I believed so strongly that I was a good person who would never hurt someone I loved like that. I think the fact that we never kissed or banged made me feel somewhat vindicated. In retrospect, though, my behavior is just embarrassing and makes me feel sick. Regardless of the state of my relationship, this whole weird fling should never have happened. I think he represented my fantasy of what my life might have been like if I hadn't met my boyfriend, the man I planned to marry, and had the chance to explore and be reckless before settling down. Eventually, my boyfriend and I broke up for good, as the same issues from the beginning had turned out to be detrimental. On a whim, partly out of curiosity and partly as a rebound, I called the other guy, who told me he was now single, to catch up. One thing led to another, and we ended up at his apartment to hook up. During the encounter, he was strangely dominating and controlling, pushing my boundaries in ways I didn't like, and trying to go further than I had verbally consented to, all while acting as if it were some playful teasing. I stopped him quickly, and then he revealed that not only had he had a girlfriend at the time, but she had been living with him. He had been trying to get me to sleep with him on the bed they shared. That was too much for me. The reality of the situation hit me, so I said goodbye, left, and haven't seen him since. The whole experience felt like a huge epiphany. I know I will never make that mistake again. Story 5. I had an affair during my first marriage. A few factors led to it. I married young, and neither of us really knew who we were or what we wanted. The girl I had been involved with on and off for a few years suddenly wanted me intensely. I later realized people often want what they don't have, and my ex became very religious, which caused tension between us. It started with innocent talking and flirting and ended a few months after I got a divorce. I learned a lot from the experience. Get to know yourself and make sure your partner knows who they are. I felt terrible about what happened, but in the end, I don't think my ex and I would have been happy together. Story 6. I met her at work. We were both married. I was a journalist and she was a cop. We were casual friends for years. Both of our marriages became strained at about the same time. It all happened on election night. I was covering the election, and she was showing support at a candidate's camp. The kiss just happened. This was all about 10 years ago. We now live together, and I know in my heart that we will be together forever. What we both learned: Have the respect and decency to break it off with your significant other first. Man up and do the right thing. If I could change one thing in my life, it would be that. People were hurt who should not have had to pay for our mistakes, and I truly regret that. Edit. It became fairly well known that we had gotten together. It's worth noting that while I worked as a reporter, she was always the worst source you could ask for. She never told me anything. I deeply respect that about her. She never let those lines get blurred. Story 7. Here I am, that involuntary a-hole guy. I met her online and we chatted for nearly a month before we started talking every day. Eventually, we met in person. Sparks everywhere. She was recently divorced, a corporate lawyer for a huge company. After a few months, we started dropping the L-bombs. The only issue was her insane schedule. I woke up around 7 and she had meetings at 6 with overseas clients. We never woke up together, not once. Fast forward another 3 months. I finally wake up next to her and she says we need to talk. I'm thinking, okay, here comes the breakup, but no. She says, do you remember how I told you I was divorced? Well, I might have been a little flexible with that. I stormed out, furious, and said, so I've been sleeping with someone's wife for all these months? Her response, isn't it great that I choose to be with you, although I'm married? Yes, these people do exist. All those mornings she left early, she was going back to her husband's bed. The thing I still wonder to this day is, what was she telling him about all those nights she spent away? It destroyed my trust in women for quite a while. Story 8. I grew up in a conservative Christian homeschool community and never knew anything else. I met a girl at church in high school, and she became my first girlfriend. We got married when we were 20, while I was still in the Marine Corps. I made my first mistakes long before we even started dating, lying to myself and everyone around me about my religious beliefs, or really my lack of them, and about my so-called personal purity. In our culture, corn was taboo, and I lied about ever watching it. That becomes relevant later. Getting married so young, to my first girlfriend from age 17, meant I never really grew up as an individual. I was only ever part of an us. Our life progressed in a very typical way. She wanted kids early, and we had 2 children by the time I was 23. I played every little game and gave her everything she wanted. Maybe because, deep down, I knew I had been lying to her about who I was, and giving her what she wanted was easier than telling the truth. She was extremely controlling. She would forbid me from having lunch with female colleagues, wouldn't allow me to hang out with guy friends unless she was there, and wouldn't let me do anything outside the house during hours when the children were awake. She would even cover my eyes if a woman's chest appeared on a movie screen. And through all of this, she remained, of course, a very conservative Christian. Anyways, my only real vice was occasionally doing it to corn. At one point, I started working a half-week night shift and would flip my schedule back to normal between shift blocks. The night before my first shift, I would stay up all night to reset my sleep. That's when I discovered chatroulette. Most of the time, I just clicked through to chat with people or mess around, and sometimes I'd fool around with a girl on the screen. One night, I fooled around with this incredible girl, and for the first time on chatroulette, we exchanged Skype information. We talked constantly through online instant messages or Skype. I would go running at night and hide at the park down the street so I could Skype with her. She was in California and I was in Virginia. She was also married and lying to her husband about who she really was. This went on for months until I eventually found a way to meet her by sneaking away from a family vacation one evening under the excuse of going to exercise. Doing it with her in the back of her SUV was the best I had ever experienced. She was only my second partner. But because of the distance, the affair was more emotional than physical. There was a physical component, yes, but more importantly, she was someone with whom I could be completely open, someone with whom I could be entirely myself. I knew it wasn't real, but it opened my eyes to what I was missing in life: truthfulness, openness, freedom, and happiness. I met the girl in California one more time by lying about a business trip, but the most important part of the affair remained the emotional connection. A couple of months after my last visit, she told me she was pregnant. I vowed not to disappear before finding out whether I or her husband was the father. This wake-up call, however, changed her perspective, and she became increasingly distant. Regardless of the paternity test results, she intended to raise the baby with her husband without question. After a few more months of minimal communication with her, I became so frustrated with the life I had built for myself, being in a relationship and a community where I never truly belonged, that I began to consider ending everything. It was only after sharing the details of my situation with several confidants that I started to consider divorcing my wife. I left, not because of the affair and not to be with the woman I had been seeing, but because, first, I needed to be true to who I was and could not be that with my wife. And second, I could not live without happiness in her controlling, restrictive world. I made the most painful decision of my life, admitting my lies to her and to everyone else, and walked away from my outwardly idyllic existence in the hope that genuine happiness was still possible for me. We later divorced. I learned that I was not the father of the baby from the affair, and the girl from California and I stopped speaking. Since then, I've been trying to relearn who I am as an individual. A lifetime of sheltered seclusion from reality makes for a steep learning curve. I do not like that it happened. I do not like how it happened. And I am not pleased, proud, or happy about the divorce, the affair, or the path my life took up to that point. I am the villain in the lives of nearly everyone I know, and that is not good, but I honestly think it is worth it. It is a terrible cliche, but I believe there is nothing more important than being honest with yourself and true to who you are. As I finally move toward that, I am beginning to see the possibility of happiness in my life. Story 9. This is awfully on topic for me. My boyfriend and I have been together for 2 years. He is wonderful, and I genuinely love him. I am serious. In the past, we have been apart for long periods, 10 months at a time, and we dealt with it by allowing ourselves to do whatever we wanted. He slept with a woman, and I slept with a man. We talked about it and continued our relationship, feeling stronger than ever. We are a good couple, on the same wavelength, always laughing, and have amazing intimate life. Now, he and I need to part ways again. My master's program is in Europe, his is in Asia, and so on. He left about 2 months ago, and we were planning to meet in February. So there are still 4 months to go. This time, my boyfriend wants to try to stick together during this period. I hesitate, we talk, I hesitate again, we talk some more, and eventually I relent because I love him. In comes this other guy, let's call him Trent. Trent is a player. He knows how to push my buttons. I start having fantasies about him, which I try to soothe by, Trent can tell I am desperate for it and he has a girlfriend, so it is clear this is not his first time doing something like this. He pursues and persists. For me, I can easily separate love and physical intimacy. I see them like boxes that do not connect unless I choose for them to. I am a perverted and sensual individual on one side, and a caring and devoted one on the other. A few nights ago, this is still fresh, I gave in. I gave in for 3 to 4 hours of pleasure, grabbing, squeezing, and I absolutely loved it. It was selfish, yes. But it had nothing to do with my feelings for my boyfriend. I love him. I simply gave in to desire. Of course, that last sentence should also say that it has everything to do with my boyfriend's feelings for me. In the heat of the moment, after months of frustration, it was just about me. I talked to my boyfriend about it. He has essentially given me another chance. This time, I will link those 2 boxes. I will remind myself of how strongly I love him if temptation comes again. I think that if I can do that, I can change. I can be better for him, but also for myself. I do not want to become someone I dislike. It is a slippery slope I am on, and if I cannot change for this man I truly love, then I really do believe I am lost forever. Story 10. This will probably get buried, but it is a pretty dramatic story that some people may find interesting. I got married at 18 to my boyfriend of 4 years. I had just finished my first year of college. I thought I was perfectly happy in my relationship. After 3 years of marriage, I was in a literature class where the professor and I started to develop a friendship. At first, we talked about books. Eventually, we began discussing our personal lives and would spend at least an hour together after class 3 times a week, while also emailing almost every day. I was in complete denial and refused to acknowledge that anything could be unusual, despite being very attracted to him. Somehow, we slid into hugging when I left his office. One day, I was fairly certain he tried to kiss me during a hug, but I quickly turned away. Afterward, I questioned whether we could still be friends, but I decided I was being paranoid and that it probably had not happened that way. Over spring break, he told me he would be around whenever if I wanted to see him. I sent him an email halfway through the break and we arranged a time to meet. I'd been sick and fell asleep right before I was going to see him. I woke up 2 hours later and went straight to his office. Amazingly, he was still there. I apologized and he told me he would wait for me as long as he needed. At that moment, I realized it was not just in my head. We talked for a while, but I could not speak well because of a sore throat. I said I should probably leave, and he came to hug me. He touched his hands to my face, and we kissed. There had been so much tension that we ended up right at the point of doing it, and I panicked. I literally jumped up off his desk, pushed him away, and threw my clothes on, telling him this could never happen again. He held me and told me everything was going to be okay. Fast forward 1.5 years. We had been going to his apartment a couple of times a week and still talking every day. It was often passionate and intense, but there were also times when we would just sit and watch a movie. I was in a different class of his, which made things very awkward at times as we tried to behave normally in front of others. We started taking more risks, frequently doing it at the top of a stairwell in his building that led to a rooftop. We had several close calls, and I was fairly certain a graduate student of his knew what was happening. During this time, his wife became pregnant and had the baby. I had spent time with the baby at his apartment. We often talked about how things would look if we left our significant others and got together. We also frequently ended things because of all the emotions involved, but it never lasted more than a week or so. Finally, it became clear to me that I needed to get away from everything that was happening and the chaos that had taken over my life. I moved to another state and told my husband not to come with me. I continued to talk to both of them and saw both of them when I went home. It was still horribly upsetting, and I felt like a terrible person. I decided the only way to get out of it was to come clean to everyone, so I told my family, close friends, and husband all in one day. Everyone was pretty shocked, except for my mother. For some reason, she was not surprised. My husband was understandably very upset for a while. We worked on things together and considered trying to repair our relationship. I eventually realized that I was not romantically in love with him, nor was I physically attracted to him. That was why my professor was so intoxicating for me. I was in love with passionate love. It was the first time I had experienced that level of passion and chemistry. The other man never came clean to his wife. They now have another child. I have not talked to him in a couple of years. I still, somewhat sadly, look at his wife's Facebook to see pictures of their first child. Strangely, I really miss that child at times. He also moved out of state. I sometimes wonder how he can act as if nothing happened and continue the same relationship without being honest. But who knows? For me, I learned what love is and what it can be. I am also much more careful and thoughtful now about how I form relationships. The best thing that came out of it was learning how to allow others to support me. In a new state with all of this happening, I had to open up to new friends and make myself vulnerable. Fortunately, it paid off, and I formed some of the best friendships of my life during that time. Story 11. My wife cheated on me about 4 years ago. I decided to stay with her and try to work things out. 4 years later, I still cannot let it go. Our relationship is good. I mean, we do not argue as much as we used to, but every time something goes wrong or she changes her habits, I automatically think she is cheating on me. It is hard now to end the relationship because I promised we would work through it, and I truly believe she is not cheating anymore. Still, I cannot shake this feeling. It drives me crazy almost every day. If I had to make the decision again, I would have ended the relationship when it happened. It just feels wrong to end it now when I know she is really trying. Love really sucks sometimes. Story 12. I suppose this is not directly related to what you are asking and will probably get buried, but I am going to post it anyway. Fairly recently, I was the victim of cheating. Not physical, but basically, my girlfriend and my best friend developed serious feelings for each other for about a month before she broke up with me and hooked up with him the same night. Here's the kicker. She lives out of state, so we only get to see each other rarely, once every 2 or 3 months at most. In the 3 months leading up to our breakup, she did not talk to me, did not talk to any of our mutual friends, and visited where my best friend and I live several times. I was not informed about it, nor was I visited. Whenever any of my friends or I confronted her about it, she would say that nothing was going on and that she still loved me. Eventually, we broke up. Neither my best friend nor she told me that they had hooked up on the same night we broke up, and since then, I have been unable to trust a girl. Fast forward a few months, I am still friends with both her and my best friend. Their relationship hit a rough patch when she cheated on him for a few days with one of our mutual friends, leaving him heartbroken. I had to play the supportive friend during the couple of days he was being cheated on. He is convinced it is his fault and refuses to admit any responsibility to the girl. She said he was too clingy, something that has been mentioned to him before, and there is nothing I can do to console him. 2 weeks later, she breaks up with the mutual friend and gets back together with my best friend. He is head over heels for her, and she seems to feel the same. A week later, I find myself spending a lot of time with her. Every afternoon, I am chatting with her on Skype. Little did I know she had been blowing off her boyfriend to talk to me, which made him worry that she was cheating with me. I assured him that we were just friends and had to deal with a flood of emotional turmoil. Do I still love her? Does she have feelings for me? Could I do that to him? Currently, she is on holiday, and our routine of talking every afternoon has been disrupted, giving me time to think. My heart still has feelings for her, but my brain says no, you cannot trust her. My friend is happy. I am not. They are cute together, and my heart shatters when I see them being affectionate. I refuse to be broken. Too late. Story 13. I was in a difficult situation with my now ex. 5 years without intimacy, and he was out of work, depressed, and verbally, and eventually physically, though not at this point, abusive. We had been together for over 15 good years before that, and I wanted to break up but was afraid to because I thought he might literally die. He had no job, no real prospects, and was not really functional. We also have many children together. I was approaching 40 and extremely frustrated as my drive increased. I felt like I was doing a poor job of controlling it because it was so constant. I felt trapped in the relationship, but could not figure out a way to separate safely. One day, I was pumping gas into my car and thinking, well, maybe I should just have an affair, but I do not know how. I do not know anyone to do that with. And where would I find a man who just wants physical relation and not? At that exact moment, a man stopped his car next to me and started chatting me up. He handed me his phone number. I should note how incredibly unusual this was. No man had done this for years. I told him not to be disappointed if I did not call, but thanked him. Over the next few weeks, I thought about it, and at some point decided it was crazy to refuse what felt like a gift from the gods. I had called out for help, and it had been dropped right into my lap, so I should at least call and see. I spoke with the man and told him the things I thought would drive him away. I have many children and still live with my partner. I only want NSA, physical intimacy only, not a relationship. It would have to be really discreet. He responded to everything very calmly and positively. We met once for lunch to work out more details, and then had one hookup. Oh my. I realized I had been doing an incredibly good job of suppressing my sexuality, and what I had been feeling before was only the bits leaking around the edges. There was spectacular chemistry with this man. He was not even physically attractive to me, just a man, you know? It was also my first experience with someone who wanted to know my fantasies and did not judge me for them. Nothing I told him freaked him out. He just wanted to see me enjoy myself, and whatever made it better for me made it hotter for him. Hands down, it was the best I had ever had. I told him I could not understand why the first hookup had not taken the edge off. It was more like it had removed the lid, and I just wanted more. We continued for about a year. My relationship with my now ex reached a crisis point when I lost my job, and he made no effort to help out by finding work. I put the affair on hold while I tried to break up with him. This did not fully take. He managed to pull himself out of his depression somewhat, and my affair came to light. We tried being open for a while, so I resumed seeing my play partner for occasional banging. But this did not really work out. He started drinking again and became physically, as well as verbally, abusive, and we eventually broke up. It has been 3 years since the gas pump incident, and I still see this man sometimes. It is still just banging and still very hot. We do not push each other for anything else. I have a boyfriend now, but we are in an open relationship. Story 14. I had a poisonous but addictive relationship with a girl. I am a girl. It was my first year at school, and I was thrilled to have found someone who liked me back. This was the first time I had a serious relationship while being out, and I felt stuck. I ignored the red flags and eventually got deeply involved in drugs with her. Fast forward to December. She dropped out because her grades were terrible, even though she was a genius. A lot of intense things had happened, and I knew she was bad for me, but I tried to let her go. I started a rebound relationship, but my ex returned to visit our school, and I could not resist. During the first week of dating the other girl, I cheated on her. I did not tell her until the summer, so I maintained this fabricated, painful relationship for 4 months. Telling her was one of the hardest things I have ever done. It tore me apart. I never thought I would ever do anything like that in my life. After I told my parents, my mother said she could tell I had done something that went against my own morals. I am now in a happy 2-year relationship with a wonderful woman who knows all of this. I learned that you should never give in to a temptation that you know will hurt another person. I also learned that I am someone who tends to act on desire without much regard for the consequences until afterward, so that is something I need to work on. Story 15. I was the other guy. The girl was an old college girlfriend. We had what I thought was a good relationship, but one evening she broke up with me suddenly. Given the facts and circumstances surrounding the breakup, the smart money was on her cheating on me. It was by far my most devastating breakup, the kind that stays with you for your whole life. After the breakup, I completely cut off all communication with her, despite her calling every couple of days. Over time, the calls dwindled, and I did my best to move on and see other people. She eventually stopped calling and we lost touch for a while. Then, one night, after I had moved 2,000 miles away, I called her just to see how she was doing. We had a good conversation and began speaking intermittently. She had been dating someone for a long time, but I could tell she was not satisfied in that relationship. This continued for about a year. I was planning a trip to visit my parents, and she lived in the same area. I asked if she wanted to get a drink and catch up, and she enthusiastically accepted. I went into it with the purest intentions. So, we met up one night for a quick drink. I was staying at my brother's house, which was a 3-minute walk from the bar where we were meeting. We had a couple of beers, and at one point she started crying, saying that breaking up with me had been the worst decision of her life. I should have left at that point, but I guess I stuck around because I was flattered. It felt like a small revenge for the night years ago when she had left me stranded. Over the course of the evening, we had maybe 3 or 4 beers each. She asked if she could crash at my brother's house with me. As someone who had received a DUI, I always try to discourage people from drinking and driving. This was only part of why I agreed. From there, the night progressed with more conversation, closeness, and ultimately intimacy between us. She got engaged to her boyfriend about a week after our encounter. Fortunately, I did not stay in town much longer and was able to put some distance between us. She did try to nudge her way into the girlfriend zone for the remaining 2 or 3 days I was home, though there was no physical intimacy. I think she genuinely wanted to be with me. I consider myself a pretty decent person, so it surprised me that I did not feel that bad about the whole situation. I knew she was in a serious relationship and still went through with it, and given the opportunity, I probably would do it again. I think part of it was the sense that their relationship was never going to work out. We continued to talk for a while afterward. One night, I got very drunk and called her, which was a really bad idea. I do not remember the conversation clearly, but apparently I told her I wanted to be with her and said all sorts of other things that were not true. A couple of weeks later, she broke off her engagement. I'd planned another trip back home, and one night, she reached out to ask if I wanted to come over. I enthusiastically accepted. She told me she had broken off her engagement, and then we banged. She wanted me to stay the night with her, which I was not about to do. Like any guy, I was already planning my exit early in the evening. We hung out a couple more times and then I left again. We never hooked up again, and she is, once again, engaged. The one thing I did feel bad about was stringing her along all that time. This whole story spans a couple of years. I do not think I learned much from it. In the long run, I hurt her far more than she had hurt me years ago. I thought it would feel better than this. I suppose I do feel somewhat bad about it, though not because of the cheating itself. Story 16. I was the other girl. We met online when we were really young, around 15 to 17. We stayed pretty good friends and had somewhat romantic feelings for each other over the years, but nothing ever came of it. He was in a long-term relationship, and I kept dating other people. Several years later, I was passing through his city on my way east to visit family. We met at the airport and ended up kissing before I had to get back on the plane. He was still in a long-term relationship with another girl. I knew this, but I did it anyway. Over the next 2 months, we developed a romantic relationship, and he expressed interest in leaving his girlfriend for me, but he was too afraid to break up with her. He came to visit me for a few days while still with his girlfriend. It tugged at my heart. He would text her constantly and said he felt bad for her. A few months after his first visit, he broke up with her but had a complete meltdown and wanted to cut me off. The problem was that I had already paid for his plane ticket to return and had made plans to visit his city again. It was a mess. It took about a week to calm him down and get him to commit to me. We continued our relationship, but it bothered me how much he clung to the other girl. There was nothing going on between them, and I trusted him. But in a way, I felt emotionally cheated. Each time we were together, he still texted her. We spent so little time together that it made me sad. We eventually broke up because I saw the relationship going nowhere. He wanted to marry me, and I wanted to marry and have children, but not with him. I learned a lot from the experience and know I will never put myself in that situation again. I simply cannot handle it. He and I still talk occasionally, but any romantic feelings left me several years ago. He has a girlfriend he has been with since about 6 months after we broke up, and I am with someone else now as well. Story 17. I was the other guy. I did not know when we first hooked up. It was pretty spontaneous. Her family knew and supported her, even giving her rides to my place. I even became decent friends with her siblings. She said her husband was not a bad guy, and it is not about the things he does, but rather the things he never does. We were on and off for 5 to 6 months. I was always the one to draw the line and stop it, but I always caved when she came back. The frustrating part was that our relationship felt oddly healthy and fulfilling. which made it very hard to push her away. She was financially well off from owning a business and some investments, and she even started talking about helping me out economically on a larger and longer-term scale, which was my wake-up call. She called and texted me for a while after I put my foot down, but I have not heard from her since. I miss her, which is difficult in several ways. I mostly wrestle with the idea that she is the most awesome woman I have ever met, but she is a cheat. Story 18. I am the mistress, I guess. He is a friend. It has been a year. It happened naturally. Chemistry, I suppose. I do not want anything more right now while I develop a business, which is my dream, and he is very busy too. He lives here and she lives 150 miles away, so he sees her about once a week. She is ready to get married. He gave her the ring 2 years ago, and he and I are not compatible in any meaningful way. We want different things in life, have different religious views, and differ on other important matters. We are inseparable, chatty, and all over each other when we are together, but rarely even text when we are apart, so as not to get him in trouble. She does not know, and I highly doubt she ever will, despite the fact that it is no secret to anyone who knows us. The geography helps, and his friends are loyal enough not to interfere. I know this sounds strange, but it is the best relationship I have ever had, and I cannot actively make myself dislike him for cheating. He is with her because, in the end, she is the right one for him, and I assume he loves her. I care about him enough to let him go when it is time, and he feels the same. He even buys me extra condoms in case I randomly hook up with someone else and helps me with my Match.com account. Neither of us sees an end to what we have, which is based on friendship, respect, and, of course, incredible physical intimacy. Life is not always easy to sort, but sometimes you just enjoy what you have. Story 19. I met a guy in grad school while I was in a 3-year relationship. Obviously, I had a choice about whether to cheat, but it did not feel that way at the time. We had an immediate, intense attraction that drowned out everything else, including the feelings of the people we were dating. It took me a couple of months for my brain to catch up and start figuring out logically what to do with the situation I had created for myself. I broke up with my boyfriend and started seeing the grad school guy non-exclusively. We both felt that jumping into another relationship right away would be even more unhealthy than what we were already doing. After about 6 months, we still wanted to be together and started a serious relationship. Long story short, we are engaged to be married next summer. I guess I learned 2 things. First, some form of cheating exists on the periphery of many love stories. I understand it can be devastating, but it is also so common that I do not think you should necessarily let it destroy you or your relationship. While many of us strive for monogamy, it can be a little like fitting a square peg into a round hole. It is not necessarily about you. My ex was a great guy, but neither of us felt much of a spark anymore. I cannot help but read posts about people whose lives are irrevocably destroyed by cheating and think that they are giving this action more power than it necessarily deserves, assuming it is not an incredibly extreme situation. The last thing I learned is that love can make us completely selfish, which is something most love stories leave out. I would have thrown everyone and everything under the bus, and in some cases I did, because of the intense need I felt to be with my now fiancé. Honestly, I probably still would if something threatened our relationship. I do not know whether I feel proud or ashamed of that attitude, but there you have it. Story 20. It started as emotional, then eventually led to kissing. We both felt too guilty to do anything more. My boyfriend at the time was in a band and gone for months at a time. That was fine. I had been dealing with it for years. But after we got back together following a 7-month break, things were different. He was distant and would call me only once during a 3-month tour. He came into town for one night to play a home show. I had not seen him in over 2 months. Instead of greeting me with a kiss or an "I love you," he said, "Hey, what's up?" and high-fived me. I would go nights without knowing where he was or whether he was safe. I would lurk online and find pictures of him hanging out with girls in other states that I knew he had slept with while we were broken up. He would lie about where he was until I called him out. I knew he was still talking to them behind my back, making fun of me for being upset and jealous that he was keeping contact with them. I loved him so much, but I was heartbroken and could not get over everything he had done to me while we were apart. I met the other man, my now ex, who ended up being a huge mistake. Karma is real, you guys. I eventually left my boyfriend for him. It was a big ordeal, and everyone lost their minds over it. Everyone took his side, and I was basically a social pariah for a while. No one except my close friends knew my side of the story or even wanted to hear it. I didn't cheat because I wanted to. It happened because I felt taken for granted and unloved. I no longer felt important to my ex, even though I had put in so much effort to make it work. Basically, I learned that if it doesn't feel right, you should just end it. I was too afraid to end it, and that fear caused even more drama and emotional distress than it would have to just break up. It has been 5 years, and we are on good terms. He has a beautiful baby girl, and whenever we run into each other, we catch up and talk. There are still people who hate me for what I did to him, and I don't blame them. But he has forgiven me, and I have apologized for my actions. We both know we were in the wrong and too young to handle the intensity of the situation. We are okay, and that is what matters. He is a good person, and I will always have a place for him in my heart. Story 21. I was dating a guy on and off for about a year. He was 36, and I was 25. Things finally started getting serious, and I really thought I could build a life with him. After 6 weeks of solid dating and being intimate, he started acting sketchy. He disappeared more often. He was in the military and made routine trips overseas a few times a month for longer periods. I confronted him, and he confessed he slept with another girl while we were on a break. Fine. He claimed she was trying to trap him by saying she was pregnant with his baby. Fine. We worked around it. He wanted me to raise the child with him and begged me not to leave, saying he loved me and wanted to spend the rest of his life with me. I was conflicted. I went to a bar and ran into some mutual friends. I said I wasn't sure what to think of him. They told me he was trying to do the right thing and be a good dad and husband to this girl. Record scratch. They didn't realize we were still dating. No one did. He had slept with this girl, gotten her pregnant, married her, and then came back to me. I threw a drink in his face, found a new job the next day, and went on the road for 2 years. What did I learn? Naivety, not curiosity, probably killed the cat. Story 22. It began because I was hopelessly in love and hopelessly insecure. There was a power imbalance. She was always right and I was always wrong. If she had been caught being inappropriate with a coworker, I was actually in trouble because she was a delicate woman and I should treat her with respect. I never let her do her own thing. If I didn't comply with her version, I was cut out for weeks. I no longer felt like a man. I was no longer potent or desirable. I was afraid and small. I cheated to gain some perverse notion of control, to retain the upper hand, and if I couldn't get control, then to get out. But I loved her and had no willpower. So I crashed the relationship by steering it off the road. I met another girl who was more like my dream girl than anyone I had ever known. It was electric, unbridled passion. How it ended? You don't learn anything before they find out. It never feels like you're doing anything wrong because the person you cheat on isn't yet affected. When they find out, that's when the learning happens. Learning comes from emotional hell, and emotional hell comes from 2 places. 1. Watching them die, vomit, or go crazy. 2. Having them actually leave you. Those are the lessons. Years later, I still have nightmares where I cry and whimper in my sleep, according to my new partner. It's a future of torment, and they will find out. In my case, it happened years later through a secondhand acquaintance I didn't even remember meeting. What I learned. 1. To potential cheaters, don't do it. You might feel confident, alive, or swept up in the excitement of new love. Cheating doesn't feel like a crime because there's no apparent victim until they find out. Then you pay with your own heart and soul, not theirs. There's no warning until the moment of reckoning, and the cost is your self-worth and the knowledge of yourself as a good person. 2. To those hurt in relationships, it doesn't matter what they've done. Your inner happiness only comes if you act rightly, no matter how badly they wrong you. If you cheat, you lose even that. You won't come out intact. 3. Cheating feels like a victimless crime because you don't immediately experience the consequences. You only feel them when they find out, which can involve 1. Watching them be destroyed by your actions. 2. Being destroyed in return when they remove themselves from your life. If that happens, you may be broken forever. A living hell where sleep itself becomes terrifying. Ask yourself, is anything worth that price? Story 23. My wife and I started casually hanging out with a couple. I developed strong feelings for the other woman, classic love at first sight type feelings. I'm not usually driven by lust, but this felt like the one. I mostly dismissed it as my imagination and tried to ignore it. A few months later, after hanging out with them several more times, she ended up kissing me. She wasn't married, but had been with her partner for a long time. She told me she felt the same way. She tried to do it with me, but I wasn't comfortable moving that fast, especially because my wife and I have rules about this kind of situation. My wife is amazing, and we have policies for situations like this. It seems silly to ruin years of love and respect over an attraction to someone else. She doesn't mind something like that happening, as long as there is complete honesty, so I told her honestly. Apparently, my wife had experienced something similar with the woman. She felt the same love at first sight kind of connection. I said, well, we'll give it a shot. I mentioned it to the other woman, thinking it was just a suggestion and that she could say, no thanks. Instead, she decided I was disgusting and not even worth talking to anymore. From that point on, any conversation with her was unpleasant because she thought it was horrible that my wife was okay with it. Apparently, she was extremely disturbed by some part of it, perhaps because there were subtle hints of a possible 3 score, which she was against, or because it's genuinely unsettling to her that husbands and wives could be okay with something like that. I'm not entirely sure. It hurt, honestly. She said some pretty nasty things to us for being the way we were. Haven't spoken to her since. The lesson I learned is that just because something feels like a Disney-style, magical, floaty kind of love, it doesn't mean the person is right for you. Your body can produce some very potent hormones. Story 24. After a year of marriage, I was becoming unhappy. My wife had little interest in physical closeness, and intimacy between us was scarce, forced, and one-sided. I felt like I was doing 95% of the work and effort. At that time, if she even touched me, I was ecstatic and felt we had a good session. She never gave me a blowy or other stuffs. I would have been more likely to fly to the moon on my own farts. At work, we had a messenger program installed that no one really used. One girl and I started using it for idle gossip. She was tall, thin, slightly older, and wore nice long dresses. She seemed really conservative. At one point, our conversation drifted to corn, and I joked, "Like you ever watch corn?" She said she did all the time, and we continued talking about that topic for a while. Over the next week or so, we chatted about different things, though the conversations tended to lean toward adult topics. While frustrated about my home life, I confided in her about my poor intimate life. At this time, there was some office politics going on, and a director was leaving the company. She and I went to the back of the office, out of sight, to discuss some work matters. At that point, I had no thoughts of an affair. After about 10 minutes of conversation, she leaned over and played with my finger. I was so shocked that I just sat there, dumbfounded. She walked off with a sly look. I honestly did not know how to react, so I did nothing. The same incident repeated the following week when we went back to discuss something else. I had no expectation of it happening again, but it did, for longer this time. I admit I had an instant stiffy. Still, we did not do anything further. A week or so passed, and our conversations became more involved. At one point, she told me that she wanted to kiss me. I said I was unsure. She insisted it was no big deal, saying she had kissed lots of her friends. For some dumb reason, I went along with it. She immediately started French kissing me, something my wife rarely does. I felt like I was in another world. Nothing like this had ever happened to me. I had never felt attractive to other women before. This was the beginning of the downfall. The bad decision, I should have stopped. It is my biggest regret. After this, things started to move faster. One day, she messaged me saying she was not wearing any underwear. She told me to go to the back of the office where we could not be seen. Once there, she began dancing for me, lifting her dress to show herself. I could not believe it. After that, she came over and started getting close with me. I flinched back, and she held my belt. I said, "Whoa, what if someone catches us? I don't know about this." She smiled, and stupidly I let her because my logic wasn't thinking. My desire was. She gave me a quick blowy. I do not think I was done, since it was just a quick session while we had the chance. Afterwards, we left. From then on, we started having more secret meetings. At one point, there was a stretch in our shifts where it was just the two of us in our department for about an hour, since one coworker was on lunch and another had not started yet. During this time, she would give me blowies in the back corner washroom. Meanwhile, my intimate life at home was still stagnant. The stress of the situation began to weigh on me. I would have mental arguments with myself during my entire commute home each day. I knew it was wrong and vowed never to do it again, but then, a few days later, it would happen again. It was always blowies, one HJ, and kissing. She started showing up early to work when I was on lunch since she had a slightly different shift. We would go out to a park or behind a building and fool around in her car. A few things to note. She always said this was just for fun. She claimed she did not want to be friends with me for some reason and that no emotions were tied to it. She made it clear early on that she was not in love with me and just enjoyed doing it with me, but also insisted that I owed her for it. At the time, I liked her personality, but I wanted the affair to end while keeping her as a friend. Stupidly, I had invited her over a couple of times, and my wife and I went out with her as friends on 2 occasions. Stupid me. At one point, I was chatting with her at night on MSN Messenger or something similar. She said, "I can't do this anymore." I thought, yes, a way out. I told her I could not continue and that I really wanted to end the affair and just be friends. She responded that she did not want to end the affair. She wanted to end our friendship. She said she did not want to talk to me. She just wanted to do it. This was when I started to realize she was unstable. I was really scared she might tell my wife. I tried to figure out how to pull back, slow things down, and let it fizzle out. At one point during lunchtime in her car, she wanted to do it. I was hesitant but went through with it. This was about 2 months into the affair, I believe. We did it in the back of her car, but I just could not continue. She gave me a blowy afterward and then took me back to the office. I think this was when she realized it was not going to happen. I was becoming depressed with myself and my selfish actions. I forgot to mention that during this month, she revealed that she had done it with lots of anonymous men. She said she always used protection, but often men would come to her apartment and she would just do it with them. She even had regulars. Basically, she was an S-worker who did not ask for money. I was shocked, but she brushed it off and rationalized it. Back to the story. I wanted out but did not know how. Completely scared that she would tell my wife. At one point, as I tried to pull back, she gave me a note to read later. When I read it, it was a confession of her love for me. She said she wanted to be with me and had all these feelings for me. My crazy alarm went into full swing. The next day, I told her that she had been the one to say there were no feelings, that it was just a physical thing. She said she knew, but that things had changed. I felt she realized I was going to call it off and wanted to hold on to me any way she could, emotionally manipulating me. We did not do anything for a while, and then she told me she was bored with me and that it was over. She said that if I did not tell my wife, she would. Just prior to this, she revealed that I was the third married man she had had an affair with. The first couple got divorced, the second did not. She had no issues with this. After we stopped seeing each other, she told me she was on husband number 4. She repeatedly threatened to tell my wife, and I believed her. I wanted to be the one to do it, thinking it was the honorable thing to do. Looking back, I now realize it was the stupidest thing I could have done. Some would say that not telling my wife would be selfish, that I just did not want to be caught, but I wish I could have spared her that heartbreak. The affair lasted about 2.5 to 3 months. It is my biggest regret. My wife and I fought like bears, cried a lot, talked, and fought some more. After a year, we got counseling, which was expensive but helped somewhat. The road to recovery was very long, and even after 9 years, we still are not fully healed, though we are better. We still fight, and she is still suspicious of me. I hate that part, but it is my fault, and I have to live with it. I do love her, and will forever regret my weakness. I know I made bad decisions, but I was also manipulated by a woman who knew what she was doing, targeting a man having marital issues. However, I can never fully explain my side because for a man there is never an excuse for an affair, so I keep quiet and accept that I was the villain. The worst part is that during the worst of our arguments, my wife would sometimes bring up the affair and use it to hurt me. This has not happened in a few years, but I am not convinced it will never happen again. I sometimes wonder if we should have divorced afterward, but I am not sure. Aside from all of this, I do love my wife and want to stay with her. I have never done anything like this before or since. After it all ended, I sent a final email to the woman and told her that I had informed my wife. I made it clear that from then on, we would only discuss work-related issues. I actively searched for a new job for a year. It was torture, having to work with her in the office, with her high tension and constant glare. I eventually put it in the past. Another coworker, whom the woman had claimed also wanted me to sleep with her, asked what happened to our relationship, which to everyone else was just work friends. I simply said that we had a falling out. However, I learned that when I was not there, the woman was bad-mouthing me heavily. I have no idea what she was saying, but I refused to stoop to that level. I stayed professional, did my work, and went home. After a year, I got a new job and left. She had quit before me, but then returned temporarily. When I left, she left again shortly after. I later heard the company went under a couple of years later. To me, she will always be the person who messed up my life. When people say the phrase, I wouldn't want to wish that on my worst enemy, I think, I wish it on her. I do not think about it much anymore, but it remains my only real regret. I wish it had never happened. Guys, do not cheat on someone you love. It is not worth it at all. Story 25. Almost universally, people who have affairs do so to satisfy a need that their main relationship doesn't meet. Either they entered that first relationship and later changed, growing up or getting older, or they refuse to acknowledge that it didn't give them what they needed, or they simply didn't know what they needed in the first place. The second thing that has to be present for an affair to happen is opportunity. This is something even happily married people can mishandle. Being married or in a good relationship doesn't grant you some kind of invulnerability to lust or infatuation. You maintain a strong relationship by avoiding situations where infidelity becomes possible. In other words, you don't tell yourself, "I'm happy with my partner, so it's fine to grab drinks with my attractive single coworker who clearly likes me too." Rather, you say, "Sorry, but I don't feel comfortable with that," or "That's not appropriate for me," or "Sounds great. I'll bring my husband or wife too." The kicker is that even if all your needs are being met in your current relationship, if you put yourself in a situation where cheating could happen, it still might. A stranger will always have one thing your significant other can't offer. They're new and different. To all the people who claim that cheating is natural for them, or that once they cheated they couldn't go back because they crave something new so badly, you don't want marriage, you want the single life. You're not dealing with natural or understandable boredom in a healthy way. You're just being a douche. In all cases, if you find yourself intensely attracted to someone other than the person you're committed to, do what you need to do. But first, have the basic decency to end your first relationship before starting another. Not doing so is simply selfish. Know yourself. If you don't understand who you are, you can't understand what you need, and you can't tell whether any relationship, your primary one or the other one, is actually right for you. Yourself. If you don't believe you're worth loving, how can you truly accept that anyone else loves you? And if your partner can't genuinely believe you love them, the relationship is already doomed. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.